Alright, so now we're going to start inserting the zip itself. So we just need to pop this. So this is the our extension, our zip extension. We have the raw edges at the top here, and we have the bagged out edge at the bottom. We want the raw edge at the top, and we're going to line the zip up with that raw edge at the top there. And then the first thing we need to do is we're literally just going to sew this in place. So sew the zip onto the extension, and really this is just to hold the two pieces together. You could do this with pins, but you know it's easy to do it with just by using the machine. And I've stopped it here to stop the stitching down where that extension is. Sorry, where the notch is. I mean, so not extension, and that notch 2 centimeters up from the from our bagged out bottom edge here. Okay. So now we want to sew this onto the front pant, and it'll go on the one that has the overlocking going all the way to the top. I'm just going to unzip the zip to make it a bit easier, and we want to sew it on here, okay? But because we've got this bit down the bottom, we sort of have to keep this in mind here. So rather than trying to sew it on this way, we're actually going to flip it over. So we're going to have the front on top, and then our zip and extension underneath.
So it's kind of right sides together, isn't it?
It is right sides, yeah.
Right side
Yep, so the outside of the fabric here. So we're just lining this up here, and I've got the edge of the overlocking lined up with the edge of the zip tape here. And you can see if I run my finger down there, it creates a little groove, there's a little shadow. So that's where we want the sewing to go. So actually I'll just pop a pin in there, because one thing before we start sewing this, we actually have to change the foot. And so we'll
getting close to those zip teeth.
Exactly. And the good thing about this too is that we change the foot, and then we can go through the whole rest of the zip construction using this this foot as well, so we don't have to change it back until we go on to sewing the rest of the short.
Mark's got the right hand side zipper foot on.
So yep, so the one that it sits on the right side of the needle with the little cutout. So I get this back up, I put a pin in there, so pull that out, and now I just want to have the edge of the foot here running along that little groove that I pointed out before. And you can get quite close to this because the zip is there. It'll only let you go so far anyway. So we'll just get down to the bottom here. So flip this over. So flip all of this stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to get in the way there. Keep going down, and you can see when I get down to the bottom here, we've got our 1.5 centimeter distance from the edge here to here. So we started at 1 centimeter before, and then when we went up to the extension, we made it 1.5. And so now we're going to sew down, and you can see our zip notch there. Going to sew down there, and then just do a back tack. So just be careful, because we've flipped these other bits out of the way behind. Make sure that you haven't sewn through any of those. And you can see the 1 centimeter from here to here, and then 0.5 from there to where the stitch line is there. Okay.
And that's that step in the fabric where it goes out an extra 5 millimeters.
So now we we'll do pull this back. So we'll do the zip up, and then just get this back to the way it should be sitting. You can open it up there.
So there's the outside of the shorts.
And you can see
there's
here
the
little 5 millimeter step there. And then when we pull this up and we match the raw edge at the top with the raw edge underneath, and you can see, keep that 5 millimeter extension all the way up there. It will come up when it gets to the top. It actually meets the zipper teeth there, because this does go back a tiny bit of an angle. So yeah, so at the top of the zip it should be 5 mil, but then it might come back to a little bit less above that, but that's inside the seam allowance anyway.
The bulk of the pull tab.
Yeah. So next thing I have to do is actually sew the zip onto, and I'll show you this in a minute.
So Mark's just pinning the folded edge down where it needs to sit so that you've got a really nice finish on the front there. You've got no tuck down this bottom section.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah,
if
important that's sitting nice
you've got
flat.
a tuck here like that or something weird happening, you just need to, you know, pull it, have it out flat. If there's something there, have a look inside, or, you know, talk to a technician about what might be happening there. But generally it's just the way that you've got this fabric lying on top of this fabric, which is creating the tuck. Okay, so we've just got this held in place here. Now we flip this back and you can see the fly facing here, and you can see the other zip. So this is the other side of the zip. We don't want to sew this other side of the zip onto here, because then we're basically just we've only got the zip on one side of the garment. So we need this. So we've put the zip onto the underside of the garment. Now we need to attach the zip to the top side of the garment.
So you're really sewing to that fly facing.
Exactly. So if we flip this over like this, and then we lift this up, you'll see there. So it creates this little space for us.
And the pins are holding the zip tape where it needs to go as well, so it makes it easy for you to know where you're sewing that down.
Yeah. And so at the top here, I mean, we can do it so that the end of the top is straight up here, but it veers off to one side because we've got the zip pull there. So we can sort of pull that off to a little bit, you know, a little bit to the right at the top. Yep. And then all we're doing now is just stitching through the zipper tape onto the fly extension only.
Oh, the fly facing.
Sorry, fly facing, yes.
Yeah, so it's only going into the fly facing at this point, and you don't need to get in super close to the teeth. You can just sort of go in between, you know, a middle point between the zipper teeth and the edge of the tape.
And again, we're going to stop this stitching when we get down to the bottom of the, or when we get down to the zip notch as well. Not going to take it all the way down the bottom. Okay. So now, when we flip this over, it's sitting flat, and we take out the pins, we actually have the edge of the zip tape stitched on to the fly facing there. Okay. Couple more things, and now the thing though, we don't leave it at this point though, because when you put it on, when it's on the body, it would just pull open like that. So what we need to do now is to sew the fly facing onto the outside of the garment so it's nice and secure. So when, you know, like, when this pulls, you know, like, it doesn't pull open and expose the zipper teeth here.
But you need to be able to get the zip down, so don't do the top stitching through the extension as well, otherwise you won't be able to open
Good
it.
point, yes. That's why we can't, if we do it here, if we sew down there, we'll actually be sewing through here. And so even if you undo the zip, you won't be able to get it open anyway.
Yeah.
Good point, Libby.
Yeah, so
All right, so, and the way that we can do that is by flipping this over to the inside and then pulling that fly extension out of the way. Okay. So now, because this is, just make sure, I suppose at this point, we probably could have left the pins in there.
Yeah, I tend to leave them in there.
Yeah,
And then it keeps it nice and flat.
So, I mean, if you've taken them out, which is what I told you to do, you can just pop them back in there again. And that way, when when we're sewing this onto this, you know, we're not,
nice
it's not just sort of like rolling here, you know, and creating this big weird tuck on the outside here. So it's keeping it nice and flat. And the other thing too is that if you unzip it, as you're going along, you can actually see where it's happening, so you can see that the fold is nice and neat there.
And so you're doing the top stitching on the inside. Actually, I think that's a really good idea. I usually do it on the outside, but I think this could be a lot easier in many ways, especially the fact that you've been able to get that open and you've been able to get that extension out of the way, and then you can just follow the edge of the facing
Yeah,
down.
everything's happening on the inside,
Yeah,
so
you just have to be
you can
accurate with your
manipulate it all.
overlocking, not chop bits off your facing, which would then change the width of your.
Yeah, that's
stitching.
important. So this
Yeah,
is
it's
nice
gotta
and
be nice and
consistent
even.
along here. Actually, I just need a mouthful of water here.
All right, we're filming again.
Okay, so now we're going to stitch this, and you can see we've got a really nice definite line there, the inside of the overlocking. So we'll start with the back tack at the top, and we're literally going to follow that overlocking all the way down. And we just need to see what's happening here. There is a little bit of a pull here happening because this seam allowance, one side of the seam allowance wants to go this way behind here, the other seam allowance is going, behind this one here. So we'll just take it down a little bit further. And as you're going to, you can lift the foot up with your knee and just reposition things as you're going around.
Get a nice curved shape.
Yeah. So we don't want any angles or anything. And then when we get to the bottom, just pull this one here, just pull that out flat, because we need to stop this stitching when it hits that center front seam there.
And you're not going right to the fold of that fabric because the fold's actually past centre front.
Yeah, so you can see there, that's the centre front there. And when we flip it over, you can see that it's just gone to that centre front stitch line there.
And that's looking really good on the outside. I suppose if it didn't, if you weren't happy with the result there, you could run another line of stitching just beside that and then unpick that one if you weren't happy with the result.
Yeah, and
you could do it on the outside.
And that
maybe.
first row would then hold everything in place for you to do another row, like on this side, so you could stitch down really there.
Good. And if you were doing jeans or something, you'd probably do 2 rows of stitching there anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah, true. Yeah. All right, so now we can take the pins out because they're not doing anything anymore. We can zip the zip up, and that's our really fly, nice, but we just have to flip it to the inside. And then
this last thing, because the zip's a little bit too long, so it's best to leave the cutting off of the zip to right at the end.
And we're just going to, because this one wants to go this way and this seam wants to go the other way, we're just going to flip that over there as well. So I'll just put a little clip in there and pull that over. Okay, but yeah, like Libby just said, the zip's too long. If your zip is the right length, and obviously you won't have to cut anything off, but mine is too long, so I'm going to cut some off, and I'm going to cut it off 1/2 centimetre shorter than the fly extension here.
Yeah, so we can hide it.
Because the thing is, it's a bit scratchy there as well, and if you do it this way, then you can just stitch it. What am I doing? Oh yeah, this way. What I was doing for a minute. Yeah, so just pull it back, and we're just going to run a little bit of stitching through here.
You really want to go across those teeth at the bottom. You don't want the zipper tab to ever pull down and fall off the end.
Well, yeah. So when you've cut it off, make sure the zip is done up. Otherwise, you can pull it down, and the zip it just falls completely off. So this is stitched here. Now, one last thing we need to do, because this is sort of just still flapping around, we can stitch it onto the fly there. And that's the good thing about this too, by using the inside of the overlocking as a guide. You can pull this, you've still got this little bit of a flap here, and so we're just going to make sure that's sitting flat. Pull back fine.
So you don't want any stitching showing on the outside unless you're doing jeans sometimes.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's sometimes on pants they'll actually have a back tack here. A bar tack. And we can do that. We have the machinery, but generally on something that's a little bit more fancy, you usually don't have.
Pant. Yeah, you don't usually have that.
Have the bar tack. So we're just going to stitch the fly extension onto the fly facing, just in that bottom corner there.